Hello everyone, welcome to session 2 of module 4, Categories of Test Design Techniques. In this session, we will understand different categories of test design techniques. So let's get started. So there are three major categories of test design techniques. We'll understand all three one by one. What are those three test design techniques? The first one is specification based or black box test design technique. The second one is structure based or white box testing technique. And third one that we'll discuss is experience based testing techniques. There are many more test design techniques apart from these three categories, but for ISTQB foundation level syllabus, only these three categories are important. So we'll discuss all these three categories in much more details in future sessions. Now let's go ahead and understand what specification based or black box testing technique means. Specification based technique is also known as black box testing technique because in specification based technique you are not concerned the internal structure of the software system. You are just verifying the functional and non-functional behavior of the software without worrying how it's implemented or done internally. So it's kind of, you are looking at the software as just a black box, provide input and check the output. That's why specification based techniques are also known as black box testing techniques. This is dynamic testing technique. So we discussed in previous sessions about static and dynamic testing technique. So static techniques are any techniques which like walkthrough or reviews, etc. So in dynamic testing technique, you actually execute the software, run the software and system, and then verify the behavior of the software, verify the functionality of the software. So specification based testing technique is a dynamic testing technique. You execute the software and then verify the functionality. Then this is input output driven testing technique, as you are not concerned about internal software architecture or structure. So this specification based technique is input output driven. You provide some input. So in your test case you say these are the input, step 1 provide this, what is the expected outcome or the output. You verify that with your expected result, and if it matches, your test passes. So this is just input output driven testing techniques. You are not at all concerned what the internal software architecture or structure is, how the code is being implemented for that functionality. You do not care that in black box test design techniques. Then in this technique, tester is concerned about what the software does, not how it does. So in this technique, you are not at all concerned about how things are done in the software, how things are done internally, how a functionality is implemented internally in the software, what the logic is in the software. You are just concerned about what it does. If you are testing a functionality that user should be able to log in successfully by using valid username and password, you're just verifying whether once you use valid username and password, if you're able to log in successfully or not. You're not concerned what code runs behind or how the login module has been implemented in black box testing technique. You test both functional and non-functional characteristics of software using this technique. So in using this technique, you test both functional and non-functional characteristics of the software. So black box testing technique or specification based testing technique can be applied to test both functional and non-functional attributes of the software. So functional attributes is the normal functionality, and non-functional attributes of the software are like the performance. You are testing the performance of the software or the module. So black box technique is used to test both functional and non-functional characteristics of the software. Now, so this is the diagram which will explain you about the black box testing technique. So there is an input arrow, and then the black box that you see, it can be a module, it can be a module of a software or whole software or system, and then you see the output or actual result that you are getting. So you provide some input in the software and you check what the output is coming or the actual result you are getting. If this output or actual result is equal to expected result that you have already defined in your test cases, what you want, what expected result should come if you provide this input, then your test passes. So this is a diagrammatic implementation of the black box testing technique. So it's just input output based technique. So you are not concerned how the logic is inside this black box that you see here. You're not at all concerned about the logic, how the code is implemented inside this module or inside this software. Now the other testing technique is structure based, or which is also known as white box testing technique. So structure based testing technique is also known as white box or glass box testing technique. So this is known as white box or glass box testing technique because you are concerned about, in this technique you are more concerned about the internal logic or implementation of the software. You are not just testing the input output thing, you are more concerned about the internal implementation and logic flow between the components of the software. So it is also, that's why it is known as white box or glass box testing technique. It is also a dynamic testing technique. So white box testing is also a dynamic testing technique. It's not a static testing. So code is run, software is executed, and then this testing technique is implemented. It's tested. White box testing uses internal software structure to design test cases. So in white box testing, you are concerned about the internal software structure, and you use that internal software structure to design your tests. Then it tests how the decisions and conditions are exercised. Unit test cases are developed to exercise loops, decisions, etc. So in white box testing technique, you test how the decisions or statement coverage is going on in the software, how the conditions are being executed. In order to do white box testing, usually in the real software development lifecycle, unit test cases are written to perform all these white box testing techniques for the modules or for the software methods or classes written for implementing any feature in the software. So you write unit test cases to exercise the loops or conditions or decisions. It tests paths within a unit and also flow between units during integration of units. So in white box testing, this also tests paths within a unit and how the flow is between the units. So it also tests the integration between the units, how the data is flowing from one unit to another. This technique requires knowledge of internal code structure and good programming skills. So usually white box testing techniques requires you a good understanding of the coding or development activities, because good programming skills, because you will be seeing at the code, you will be having exact development environment that the developers have, and writing the unit test cases to test um, to test the unit, or to test the functionality of the uh, classes that are implemented in the software. So this requires knowledge of internal code, how things are implemented, and how your good programming skills as well. So most of the time white box testing in most of the organization, it is done by the developers. Testers are not much involved in white box testing technique. They are just involved in the test design phases, in giving inputs for the white box testing, but the actual unit test cases are being developed by the programmers or developers. Now this is the diagrammatic representation of white box testing technique. So you can see it looks at the inside the code. So you read the values, you add them if z is less than 10. If it's true, then you print z. If it's false, then ends the program. So this is a simple module or a simple method or class that can be implemented in any software. So white box testing is a testing technique, tests the internal flow, how the flow will happen inside this module and what the results will be. So you will have a test case to exercise a true condition, you will have a test case to exercise the false condition, and see that everything in this module or in this code is fine. So you write unit test cases and then you execute different conditions with different input data for values x and y, and exercise true and false path. So you are concerned about the core logic or the code for this technique, in this technique. Now experience-based testing technique, that's the third testing technique. So in experience-based testing technique, knowledge of testers, developers, users, any business user is used to design your test cases. So like as in black box testing technique, you just used input output method. You were not concerned about any internal logic or implementation of the software. In white box, you were concerned about the internal logic and implementation of the software. In experience based, you just used the knowledge or experience of previous work that has been done, previous testers involved or developers involved, to design the test cases for the future releases. So experience of both technical and business people is considered in experience-based testing technique. So suppose you are developing human resource management or payroll application. So payroll business users are involved because they are experienced in that payroll department, and they will be able to provide much better input in designing the test case, because they are well experienced in the payroll department. So their experience, because they are business users, their experience is utilized to design the test cases in this experience-based technique. So similarly, if there are some experienced senior testers in the team, they provide input based on their prior experience to design the test cases. then because of the prior experience, people know where things can go wrong in the software. So that is why in experience-based technique, it's very important to take expert advice or their prior experience and prior knowledge of the people in the business, in the testing team, in development team, to design the test case, because they are very experienced in that software, in that area, and they know where things can go wrong. So you design your test cases based on the experience, prior experience of people or the project to design your test cases. Now, where to apply different categories of testing techniques? Now, specification based or black box testing techniques are used at all levels of testing. So black box testing techniques can be used at all levels of testing. You can use black box techniques in component testing till acceptance testing. Requirements docs, design docs form the basis for the test. So in black box testing, you use requirements documentation, design documentation to form the test cases, to find out the test cases in black box test design techniques. So the requirements documents, design documents are the test basis for the black box testing technique. Then white box testing technique or structure based testing techniques can also be applied at all the levels, all the test levels. It can start from component testing till acceptance testing. And the actual code is the basis for the tests. So you see the actual code, your design document, your high level or low level design document to form the test cases, unit test cases for the structure based or white box testing technique. Then in experience based testing technique is used to complement black box and white box testing. It complements both the testing techniques. This is used, experience based testing technique is used to, in most of the cases when you have inadequate documentation or no documentation for designing the test, or you are testing a less risk application, and you have to deliver it within 15 days or 1 month time. So you use experience based techniques, design the test and prioritize your test cases based on the previous project risks and experience of people, and execute the test and release your software. Then experience based testing also leads to exploratory testing. So exploratory testing is a new testing technique which is derived from experience based testing technique, and because of any limitation or inadequate documentation, time pressure, you can use exploratory testing and release the software. So to conclude, in this session we understood about 3 test design techniques. The first one we learned is specification based or black box testing technique, which is just concerned about what the software does. It's not concerned how it does. It just monitors the output. You provide input, monitors the output. If output is equal to expected result, your test passes. Then structure based or white box testing technique is more concerned how things are being done inside the software, how the code is implemented, what the logic is in implementing any module or functionality of the software. So you design test cases to test that logic of the software. Then finally, the experience based testing technique is the test technique that complements both of these black box and white box technique, and can be used as a standalone technique in case you have extreme time pressure to deliver a software, or there is very less or minimal documentation available for the test designing. So if you don't have much documentation, or you are under extreme time pressure and budget, so you can use experience based testing technique. Thank you.